morning, everyone. How are you? Linda here from the She Is Project. Getting ready for some people to join us. Hey, Fiona. And Fiona and I are going to continue our conversation that we started about 2 weeks ago about anxiety. And it was really very well received. So we thought there's more to this conversation, and so why not hop on and have part two? And here she is.
Hello.
Hi, Fee. How you going?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. You look a little less full angelic. I think the first time we did this, there was a lot of
I
divine
had the
around you.
curtains open and I just quickly closed them because I remember.
Well,
Yeah.
either way, you look lovely.
It's the full face experience now.
That's right. Well, we can see actually, yeah, all of your features now. Well, thank you for sharing last week, and just got so much great feedback about your honesty and your insights, and just some really practical help, but also I think evidence again that there's so much value in having our stories validated and being reminded that we're not the only one. And I feel like you did that so eloquently for so many of us who have had to deal with anxiety either personally or live with someone for whom that's a challenge. To hear your perspective and some of the things that have been helpful was fantastic. So we're going to go round two. And given that there's some people who haven't joined us before, hey, beautiful Naomi Mackey is joining us all the way from WA and the wilderness. So exciting. It's almost as good as having you here, just knowing you're on the other side. So just to honour the time that we've got together, Fiona, can you just tell me what your definition of anxiety is?
Yeah. It kind of changes, I guess, for each person. I suppose every person would have their own definition, but for me, it's really a healthy emotion, essentially. So anxiety is a good thing. We need that to survive. It's the little warning bells inside of us that tell us when we're in danger, or it's our natural stress response. The problem is when you have a bit of an anxiety disorder, which is what I experience, which is when those alarm bells are signaling things that aren't actually threatening your life, but you're feeling like they are. So it's your fight, flight, and freeze response has just gone a little bit haywire. So for me, for example, they talk about it being like your lizard brain. So, the concept is that, back in the day when we were running away from, dinosaurs or animals that could kill us, this anxiety response was the thing that was saving our life. It was telling us, that cheetah is about to pounce on you and eat you. You better run, or you better do something. And it's this flush of adrenaline and, fear essentially through your body to make you get out of the way. But now in our modern day world, we don't have, I haven't had a cheetah chasing me down the road trying to eat me. But, when an email is hitting my inbox, or when I'm having a difficult conversation, my body is reading that as a danger to my life in the same way that it would have perceived other things. And I think part of that is because the things that are a danger to our life now are things like social isolation, or work, you lose your job and you've lost financial security. So it's kind of not life or death, but it's almost like anxiety is just telling me that there's a threat and I'm responding to that. But it's different now, but so for me, that's how I see my anxiety, as something that's trying to keep me alive. But it's just a little bit overly cautious sometimes. And, I'm not going to die at work, but it thinks that I am, that sort of deal.
So it's almost like your body's helicopter parent. It's like overly protective, and overly sensitive. And once it's been activated, then it can tend to have a momentum all of its own that
Yeah.
you struggle to try and bring back into a place where you're controlling it rather than it controlling you. Would that sound
Yeah, that's right. It's kind of just gone a bit rogue.
okay? So
Hopefully.
how do you know when you're experiencing anxiety? What are the things that you're feeling or sensing or
Yeah.
experiencing?
For me, there's kind of a range of things, and they don't all happen at the same time. And for other people, it might be different. So for me, things like anger outbursts, which I actually found that's actually my fight response. So I get snappy and I start lashing out at, people or situations. Just feeling down, feeling demotivated, that general feeling of like, just not wanting to do anything, which I guess is a bit of my freeze response. Like I just opt out of life a little bit. Negative thinking, aggressive self-talk, and sorry, I wrote them down because I can't remember them. Emotionally sensitive is a huge one for me. Massive meltdowns. So, for example, when Dave and I were getting married, I didn't know at the time that I had anxiety. So now it's fun to look back over the wedding planning and going, oh wow, there was a lot of anxiety. So one of my bridesmaids was running 30 minutes late to a bridesmaids meeting that we were having. I cried for about an hour. I had like a massive meltdown. She was no longer going to be a bridesmaid. I was not inviting her to the wedding. She was out of my life. Like this
Wow.
massive overreaction to
Is she
someone.
listening?
I
Does
don't
she
know.
know all
Kylie, I
that?
love you. She knows this story. But it's just like this whole, it doesn't matter, but you've lost all sense of, everything is just getting that alert, and I'm just overwhelmed and I'm not functioning properly. So that's kind of a case in point of those big meltdown moments where you're just, everyone else is looking at you going, you're being irrational. But that's in my mind, in my body, it's a huge threat that I'm responding to, even though nothing bad is actually happening. And that's
Right.
kind of the bit that makes you feel a bit crazy. And then I'll get stuff like, my sleep won't be great. And my other biggest warning thing is numbing. So this is another Brene Brown thing, but she talks about go into numbing, which a lot of people do with, say, drugs or alcohol, but I do it with social media and work. So I know that I'm not in a good place if I'm just scrolling social media mindlessly for hours, just sit there and scroll, or I will just keep working. Like I'll work just later and later and later, and it's this feeling of I just don't want to acknowledge the real world. I don't want to engage with it. I just want to stay in this little bubble where I'm feeling good about myself.
Okay.
So yeah, it's kind of all these subtle ways that I feel like I notice, oh, this isn't that great.
So a lot of the things that you've described, I would, my observation would be that most people experience a degree of those things in some way
Yeah,
at some
yeah.
time. So how do you know when it's become more than just an emotional response in a moment to something where you actually need some expert intervention?
Yeah, I think for me, it's a bit like seeking medical help. So we all have those buffers where we're like, I've got a bit of a cough. I can look after this at home myself. And then, oh, this cough is dragged on. I need to go see somebody. I'm going to go see my doctor. So for me, it's that whole, I've been in a funk. I felt a bit stuck for a few weeks or a few months. But then when it gets to a point of I've been going around the same mental mountain. Another thing that I do a lot is when you just keep recreating the past or you just role playing the future all the time. So you're constantly having arguments with people in your head, rewriting history, trying to, that sort of thing where you're never in the present. You're just having the same argument with your boss over and over and over again. And it's tormenting you really. So, so for me, for example, when I, finished the job at the church, which we talked about last time, which had kind of been a catalyst for a lot of my anxiety, I spent 2 years kind of on my own trying to work through things. And I did work through some stuff, but at the end of that 2 years, there were just like these certain key elements where I was like, I just can't get past this. Like,
Okay.
some really strong emotions, or I just can't solve it. And so that's when I went and saw somebody, because I had reached a point where I couldn't do it my own anymore.
Yeah.
And if you talk to most people, they'll be like, something's happened 3 years ago and they're still not over it. And that's the point where I think you need to see somebody, because you're clearly not healing on your own.
Okay. So what do you think is causing your anxiety, that's an ongoing anxiety?
Okay, yeah. So I had to write down some notes, because it's still something that I haven't talked about a lot, and it gets a bit like, you know, I'm still getting my head around it in a lot of ways, because it's something I need to teach myself. So, I mean, everybody's different. For some people, it's an actual chemical imbalance, or maybe it's linked to a specific trauma that they've experienced. For me, a lot of my anxiety sprouted from a workplace environment. It's kind of been a common theme for me that it's something linked to my work. So at first I thought, oh, it's my job, like it's my workload, it's my lifestyle. I need to change all of those things. But when I would change them, or I'd go on a holiday or something, it wouldn't make any difference. So that got me digging deeper. And one of the things I noticed is that every time I would have a meltdown, which aren't uncommon for me, I usually at the end of, going on about all the top level stuff, like, this person is annoying me or whatever, at the end, I always end up saying a sentence along the lines of, I just don't feel like I'm worth anything, or I feel worthless.
Okay.
So it kind of will always funnel down, and that's kind of the final core that I end with.
Mm-hmm.
And so that really got me thinking, I don't think this is about the top level, they sent this email, I was called into this meeting stuff. Because
Right.
I've had 3 different jobs and worked with lots of different people, and I still end up coming down to this same phrase of, I just feel worthless. And
So just to sort of like summarize what you've said so far, is that the details, the external factors could ebb and flow, but when you actually reflected back over an extended period of time, even when some of the details changed, the essential element that was really always present was more around value.
Yeah, it's like I say, having the same argument with someone and it ends up looping into the same circle,
Okay.
even if it starts as a different argument.
Yeah.
It's like that. I just will melt down, and it will be about, whatever situation. And then, it will always distill into, I feel worthless. I don't feel like I have any value.
Okay.
So that was kind of my breadcrumb to follow.
Right.
And then a lot of things started clicking in for me a bit when we did a retreat ages ago with Alicia Britt Chalet, and she did a whole talk and a whole quote based on a Bernard of Clairvaux quote about reservoirs.
Mm-hmm.
Talked about the difference between a canal or a river and a reservoir, where a reservoir holds water until it's full, and then it will overflow into the next level, like a dam or something along those lines, as opposed to a river that's just constantly giving out.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that she talked about was this concept of reservoirs that had, I guess, levels or stages.
Mm-hmm.
And she started naming them. So you had your top smallest reservoir, which was your inner world, your soul, your heart, your relationship with God. And then your next level reservoir, which was something like, your immediate family, your household, that kind of, next closest layer. And then maybe, family and friends, and then workplace and church, and it kind of would go out from there.
Yes.
And so it starts as our internal life, and then it kind of grades out to our absolute external life.
Yes.
And so for me, like most people, my external life, so like work, social media, church, those things that are removed from my inner world, is where the party's happening. So I'm getting all of my value from work because I'm, you know, I'm a good worker and I'm turning jobs around and they're giving me high fives and gold stars and telling me I'm a legend. And then I go to church and I do lots of serving there, and then they tell me that I'm a great person, and I go on social media and I post something and I'm getting the likes. And so without knowing it, I am pulling all of my value and self-worth. And I'm not someone that would have considered myself like a shallow person or a surface level person. I had no idea I was doing this, but I was pulling all of my value from those outer rims at the bottom of this reservoir fountain.
Mm-hmm.
But that water is like, it's just getting poured in by other people, essentially. I'm not filling it up myself.
Yeah.
And all the top levels are like dusty and dirty, and there's no life or nothing's flowing down there. It's all from this outside part. And what happens is you lose the job, or people stop, or you come off the volunteering team or whatever it is, and people aren't telling you that you're great anymore. And then your work is drying up because you don't have anything left. And then you have anxiety because now your brain is like, everything around me is dying. I'm dying. Like, you're panicking. And so what I learned, you know, and of course I'm going to quote Brene Brown again, is that what I was doing was hustling for my worthiness. I was experiencing anxiety as a lifestyle, exhaustion as a status symbol, and productivity as self-worth.
Wow.
And yeah, thank you, Brene.
I know.
And so what I needed to do was figure out how to get water into that top layer so it could flow down. And that actually also meant letting the outer, more external layers to go dry and let everybody think whatever they want to think of me while I work on the inner stuff. And so that's where a picture of the well came in, which you actually gave me at that retreat. It was such a long time ago, but it was really helpful. And so I began to learn that in the core of me, there is a well. And so there's a bucket and chain that drops down to water. And I call that water living water. And that is my worth. And it's 100% complete all the time. That's just my worth as a human. It's my worth as me. But what happens is if I don't drop the bucket down and access my worth, I don't benefit from it. So it's like being filthy rich and all your money's in the bank and the ATM's broken.
Yeah.
And you're still rich, you just can't access your money. So that's what I realized. I was like, it's not that I'm worthless. It's that I'm not practicing accessing my worth. And now I'm hustling for my worth from other people. But so I'm like a rich person begging on the street for money, where I actually just need to fix the ATM and access it my own money and stop asking everyone to give me theirs. So
how did you do that? We're all hanging on the edge of our seats.
That's a great question. I'm still learning. It's been a process, but essentially it was, I wrote it down because I was like, I know you were going to ask me that. So that's what I'm using practices that are like a bucket and chain that are helping me connect to more my sense of worth. Like, I'm already worthy. I just need to connect to that realization.
Okay.
So for me, it's things like my morning routine. It's deep breathing, journaling, meditation, mindfulness, because it's slowing me down and it's opening my heart up and it's connecting me to something bigger than myself. For some people, that's a relationship with God. For other people, that's just that sense of I'm part of, you know, a universe as a whole. But it's like a pit stop. And so what I'm doing is I'm not working harder for other people to give me something. I'm actually doing the opposite. I'm stopping and being very still. Glennon Doyle actually talks about sitting at the bottom of her closet and going into the knowing, like just being so still and just accessing her own knowing. And it's almost like that. It's like going, no, I'm not going to go outside for worth. I'm just going to be still and go, deep, you know, what is God saying about me? Or what do I know about myself? Or what is you know, who am I really? It's getting in touch with that. And I actually visualize as I'm doing my breathing and things of it like plunging into that water and bringing it up and refreshing me. It's really self-love and self-care, but not in the whole have a bubble bath way that people talk about it.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it drives me crazy because I'm like, but it's accessing not love that I'm bringing up for myself, but the love that God or, you know, the universe or whatever feels comfortable for you has for me. And it's also just believing that I'm already at 100% and it's there for me to access. And a lot of that is a mind shift of like, I'm not becoming more worthy. I am worthy. And I'm just realizing how worthy I am.
That's a massive, just to interject there, that sense that I'm not at 90% or 40%, I'm actually at 100%, that nothing external or even internal that I do changes the 100% value and worth that I have.
Yeah.
My actions and decisions are not changing my value. They're actually just enabling me to live out of my value, the awareness of my value. That's a really profound, but almost very sort of subtle shift.
Yeah.
And
it's very simple, but effective.
Not easy to do. Well, but not an easy thing to actually discipline yourself to sit.
Yeah.
That discomfort.
Yeah.
And access
That's
that.
right.
Yeah. So how much of that journey have you been able to do on your own, as opposed to, apart from Saint Brene, access, like, when do you feel like you need to access expert help?
I feel like I watch myself. It's not a hard and fast rule. It's more now I kind of know when I hit something, I suppose, from just my journey. I know how much I can get through on my own and when I need a sounding board. And I guess the way that I see my psychologist or counselors and stuff is very much as like, these are people I check in with, these are people that I just book appointments with when I need it. It's not a huge, like, scary thing for me to call on them. But I probably do about, I suppose, about 70% or 80% of my time not seeing anybody, and then about 20% I do see someone. But I am very, it's just that, like I said before, it's like your health, like you just get to know yourself, and you get to know, this is something that I can navigate on my own, or this is something that is new to me. So I think, I mean, I use seeing somebody as more, they're helping me get the knots out when I can't detangle something on my own. So I guess there's certain things where I'm like, oh, I need to get a new perspective on this issue, and I know that it will take time, but I will get there. But then there's other things where I just think, I don't even know how to get around this, and that's when I would go see somebody. But I think when in doubt, and if you're new to kind of your own mental health journey, you want to be with somebody because you need just the encouragement and someone to cheer you on. It can be a very lonely journey. And the first time I ever saw a counsellor, I basically got tricked into seeing one, which was actually really fortunate because I don't think I would have ever gone and seen someone. And I thought we were just catching up to help her with some counselling work she was doing. And then a year later, I was like, so how many of these practice sessions do you need? And he's like, oh, that finished ages ago. We've just been going, which was good for me because I never would have signed up for it. But, you know, so that my first experience was, I think, fortnightly for a year sort of thing, like a lot. But now a lot of the things that I learned from that journey, I can just implement. It's like seeing a physical trainer or someone. You learn the exercises yourself after a while, and then you can do them. So it's that sort of exchange.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think there's no substitute for having the benefit of an outside perspective on your own life,
Yeah.
particularly when you can become so immersed in competing voices and stories that you've told yourself, that you believe other people are telling you, that have some sort of vested interest in your performance or productivity or value. And
Mm.
going into a place where you have someone who, for all intents and purposes, is absolutely objective with no
Yeah.
other agenda than just
Yeah.
listening to you,
Yeah.
it's incredible the insights that another person can have
Yeah.
on on your own life just by listening to the way you talk about your own circumstances and situations, because
Yeah.
we've become so used to our own voice and our own story.
Yeah. That's right. And you think that what you're telling them is scary and new and that they're gonna be in shock. Um, you know, like they've heard it all before. Like to speak to you, it's your big first step. For
Yeah.
them, it's just another Tuesday. It's just another, you know, oh, it's just another appointment with Linda or Fiona. It's
Yeah.
not, they're not going home and having their world rocked by your story. But for you, it's giving you immense freedom. And
Mm.
I actually find that freeing. I think you can be scared that you're going to burden them or they're going to find it overwhelming because it's overwhelming for you. But that's why you see a professional and not a friend, because a friend would be overwhelmed and they can't carry your story of abuse or your
Mm.
story of trauma or your story of how, you know, an organization that they're also a part of has hurt you. But someone who's removed from that can hear all that and it's not burdening them. And that's really
Mm.
freeing, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what would be, imagine Fiona a few years ago who was just nervously, probably slash terrified of talking to somebody. If there's somebody listening now who has that sort of sick feeling in their stomach that thinks, I think I really do need to see somebody, what encouragement could you give them?
Um, it's like most things in life, it's never as scary as you think it's going to be. And I mean, I often still cry on my first appointment with someone because it's always overwhelming. Like, you're like, oh, I've come with my little bag of, you know, stories and I'm going to lay them out. It's very vulnerable. And I think to me, anybody that gets professional mental health assistance is an absolute hero because you're going against years of stigma, and especially, you know, if you're someone that grew up before, you know, before this century or millennium or whatever we're in, like it's, you know, you were not presented mental health solutions in a positive light. So I
Mm.
just applaud anybody that goes, but I think, um, you know, it's not as invasive. You're controlling the narrative the whole time. You're just talking
Mm.
to somebody. It's like going for coffee with a friend, except you've
Mm.
just met the friend and, you know, you're not in a cafe. But it's that sort of, it's not like you're not laying on a couch and they're not sitting behind you trying to tell you that, you know, you're experiencing something you're not.
Mm.
It's very much like Linda and I are talking right now. It's just they're asking you thoughtful questions and you respond, and you know, but it is work. Like you've got to commit to the journey of health.
Mm.
Um, but the friends that I have, you know, lovingly pushed into, you've got to go see someone. All of them have just had their worlds changed.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, and if you're seeing someone who's not a great fit, go see someone else. Like I went and
Oh,
saw a psychologist this year, and after one session, I was like, I'm not vibing this. So I just emailed him and said, sorry, I'm going to find someone else. And I did. Like, it's not, you're not marrying them. it's just, you're just seeing somebody. It's fine, you know?
I think that's a really important point, because there can be anxiety about getting someone talking to someone about your anxiety,
Yeah.
and that every good counselor or psychologist who has any sort of professional integrity will say to you, if this is not working for you, that's
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
because they understand that relationship and trust is the foundation of any helpful, effective counseling therapeutic relationship. And so the last thing you need to do is feel any guilt or shame about feeling
Mm.
uncomfortable. if you don't feel
Yeah.
comfortable, then it's okay to seek an alternative.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I have seen a number of different therapists over the course of my life, and have gone to each one with great fear, trepidation, and reluctance.
Yeah.
And I thank you for shining a light on the fact that still, even in the 21st century, depending in what community and context you're in, you feel like this is just reminding me about how much I suck because I need to go and get help from someone else.
Mm.
When really all I've heard all my life is that I should be able to do this myself.
Yeah.
But I think it's a really, the more we talk about it, the more opportunity there are for people to realize they're not the only one. In fact, I think every single human would benefit from talking to a professional listener.
Yeah, I think so too.
However you can find that person, and that needing help doesn't make you a failure, it makes you a human.
Yeah. Well, I always think about it like growing up in church, you're told to basically forgive and forget. Like, just forgive them. If you forgive somebody, it's all over. And I've learned that is not true. Forgiveness may be a first step, but I look at it this way. Let's say that, we've had an altercation and you've stabbed me in the leg with a 6-inch knife, right?
This is theoretical, not real.
Something's gone wrong. So I'm standing there with a knife sticking out of my leg with blood pouring down. And I'm saying, Linda, I forgive you. Like, great, our relationship may be repaired. That wound of our relationship may be healed in that moment. I still have a wound now that needs attention. Mm-hmm. So unless I want, there to be gangrene and my leg to be removed, I need to go get medical care, have the leg removed, the wound cleaned, it's surgically stitched together, and monitor it until it becomes a scar. Mm-hmm. But that's what I think happens is, let's say that we're friends and we have a falling out and words were said, and I can forgive you all I like. I have wounds from that altercation that I need to go talk to someone about and have healed correctly. Because if I don't, it doesn't matter how much I forgive you, they will fester and I will have long-term ramifications. Like I will shut down in myself, or, I'll always be a bit bitter or have this lens that I see life through. And that's how I see it. Like if you've had sexual trauma or any sort of abuse or any sort of long-term mental health issue, you've got knives sticking out of you that need care. And every time someone at church says, just forgive, I just think, you don't understand emotional healing. Forgiveness has its place and it will heal a relationship, but you can't get, sexually abused and forgive that person and think it's just better now. It's they're two different journeys, and that's kind of another thing that I think people, they don't get help because they think I just need to keep forgiving, and that always lights a fire under me. Yeah, very passionate about that one, because I just don't think that's the role of forgiveness. It doesn't do that for you.
It's one of the stages in the journey, but it's not the fullness of the healing journey. It's part of it, but
absolutely,
that's a really important point to make, is that even when you say that I'm moving on, what you have lived, your lived experience, and for many people, our lived experience is, even though our words have moved on, our body and our brain and our emotions and our soul has not. It's still holding on to anger, resentment, the feeling of being misheard, misunderstood, of being ignored, of feeling less than. And I can keep saying those words as much as I want. But until I actually acknowledge I'm still in pain.
And well, I think, because then you think you're a bad person because you're like, I just need to forgive them more. And it's like, no, you've got a knife hanging out of you. You need to.
That's right.
But otherwise, you just keep thinking exactly what you're saying, like, there's something wrong, I'm not doing it right. And that's sad and scary and, like, yeah.
Really unhelpful.
Really unhelpful. Unhelpful to everybody. You're just like, your legs turning into gangrene and you're just trying to keep forgiving someone. It's, yeah,
No,
that's how I see it anyway.
Well, I really appreciate all of your insights, Fiona. You've got a beautiful way of painting pictures, I think, that make it very accessible to all of us. And I appreciate the hard work that you've had to do to be able to do that, and the hard work that you're still doing. And just want to reiterate to everyone who's listening what Fiona said, that to actually acknowledge that you need the help of someone who is trained in an area that you are not, so that you can be free and whole, is an act of bravery, and is the greatest act of self-love that you can actually execute. Because all the bubble baths and spa dates and glasses of wine in the world cannot actually heal a broken heart.
No.
But actually being able to sit in a safe place with someone who is able to reflect back to you the fuller story of what you're living, and then bring strategy and perspective that it's impossible for us to have on our own. And to actually open that door a little bit wider. And in my experience, let the pure undiluted love of God shine into that situation. That's where the healing's going to come. But as long as I pretend I don't need God's love, then I'm actually effectively blocking myself off from that. And I love the example you used about the well, is that the value and the worthiness is there. But how am I able to access that? And I feel like this won't be our last conversation around this journey, but thank you for speaking to me and everybody else today. And to those of you who are still online, just letting you know that this will go up permanently on our Instagram page, and we are working at getting it onto YouTube. Not my area of expertise, but I am reaching out to ask experts to help, so that these things can be viewed again, or you can share them with your friends. And we're just, we're a work in progress, but we're committed to what's on the other side of the journey. So thanks everyone for joining us. Next Tuesday, I'll be speaking to somebody else. I'm going to leave it a surprise for now. And, but really appreciate everybody listening, and appreciate you, Fiona. Love you. Bye, everyone.
Love you too. Yeah.